In the second season of Star Wars Rebels, audiences were brought to the forbidden planet Malachor, an ancient battlefield ravaged by an ancient Sith weapon. Rebels presents Malachor as a cursed and frightening place, covered with petrified corpses from that great battle thousands of years ago. But Rebels wasn't the first appearance of this planet, and in older Legends material, especially Knights of the Old Republic 2, Malachor 5 is a much different world, if one with a vaguely similar theme. This original version of Malachor was also tainted by a Sith temple, and was the cursed site of an ancient battle, but it was a much more terrifying world with a more complex history. In this video, we'll be comparing the two versions of Malachor and explaining why the original is so much more effective.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Malachor was certainly one of Rebels' more unsettling locations. It's a barren, black-crusted, rocky world, and most of its surface seems completely flat and empty. It's still and silent, but not in a peaceful way. The entire planet conveys a sense of foreboding and desolation. This is virtually the exact opposite of how Legends does things, as we'll discuss in a bit, but this deviation is nonetheless effective, and we're not going to criticize it here. The deadness of Malachor in Rebels is quite effective. As for why this planet is dead, the answer was beneath the surface in an ancient Sith temple. Malachor was the site of an ancient Sith superweapon, capable of petrifying massive numbers of living beings, turning them to stone and trapping their spirits forever. This weapon was used in the Great Scourge of Malachor, an ancient battle during the wars between the Jedi and the Sith, during which it misfired and petrified all living things on the planet, rendering it the cursed, desolate world we see by the time of Rebels. Thousands of years later, the petrified corpses of the combatants lay scattered about the temple, their ancient terror plainly evident through their postures. In Malachor's primary canon appearance in Rebels, the focus is less on the planet itself and more on the ancient superweapon, which is almost activated but ultimately destroyed by the crew of the Ghost. With that said, even though the focus isn't on Malachor itself, enough time is spent on it that the spookiness of the setting is appropriately conveyed. Something terrible obviously happened there, and the dead planet stands witness to atrocities that can scarcely be believed. It's cool enough, but it falls so far short of the original Malachor.
You should not have come to Malachor. She will break you, your mind, your body. You will be lost.
In Legends, Malachor 5 was originally also a Sith world, but its devastation happened not in a battle between the Sith and the Jedi, but between the Jedi and the Mandalorians. Malachor 5 was the last battlefield of the Mandalorian Wars, the site of the confrontation between Revan's tattered fleet and what remained of the Mandalorian Armada. The fighting was fierce, and as in canon, at the height of the battle, a superweapon was activated, the Mass Shadow Generator. This device exploited local gravitational anomalies in the Malachor system, and it was deployed by the Republic with the intention of destroying the Mandalorian fleet. It did so much more. When the Mass Shadow Generator was activated, Malachor 5 was destroyed, rendered desolate and unrecognizable by the sheer force of the artificial gravity. The bulk of both fleets was crushed into its crust. The Mandalorians died. The Jedi died. In an instant, millions were ripped apart by the force of gravity, their screams echoing through the Force so loudly they could be heard from across the galaxy. The Mandalorian Wars ended at Malachor 5, but the pain of those who died in that terrible battle endured. Their suffering became part of the planet, and the planet itself became a wound in the Force.
There is a world on the Outer Rim surrounded by mass shadows. Past the graveyard of Mandalorian warships, this planet suffers. crushed in gravity's fist. To walk on its surface is to feel it crushing every cell of your being. It is like being buried alive until it seems you will never breathe again.
In the decade after the Mandalorian Wars, Malachor 5 was an unstable world. The planet itself had broken apart and reformed around the mass shadow generator, and the mass shadows the weapons had created still existed, surrounding the planet with gravitational anomalies. The space all around the planet was choked with wreckage and corpses, and the blackened husk of the planet itself coursed with green lightning storms so fearsome they could be seen from space. Ships that strayed too close to the planet would be sucked down by the mass shadows and pulled through the planet's turbulent atmosphere before being rammed into Malachor's crust. Survivors of these crashes would find themselves in a hell beyond imagining, and only those strong enough in the Force to be able to rip a downed ship free of the mass shadows could ever leave the planet again. The surface of Malachor 5 was jagged and broken, dominated by spires of obsidian black rock and ravines that plunged impossibly deep into the planet, overshadowed by endless storms. Malachor's constantly shifting gravitational anomalies could be felt by any who walked on its surface, crushing the breath from their lungs in a sensation that Kreia compared to being buried alive. But the true horror of Malachor lay beneath this tortured surface. Deep within Malachor 5 lay the Traeus Academy, an ancient bastion of the Sith where the radical teachings of the true Sith remained. It was a tainted place, a nexus of the dark side, and it had thoroughly corrupted Malachor even before the Mandalorian Wars. Its influence amplified the suffering of those who had died in that final battle and affected the wound in the Force left by the battle as well. Because of the Traeus Academy, the wound at Malachor 5 did not heal, it grew. Thus, even 10 years after the Mandalorian Wars, the pain of that final battle was palpable to all who trespassed on Malachor. The agonized cries of those who died in that moment still screamed across its windswept surface, drowning out the Force itself. During the Jedi Civil War, the Sith brought captured Jedi to this planet to break them. They did this not through conventional torture, nor through some forgotten ritual, but by just dumping them on the planet's surface and forcing them to experience Malachor. Every last Jedi who came to Malachor either died or succumbed to the dark side, and even those in the latter category often lost their minds or even their humanity. Many of them became extensions of Malachor itself, part of the wound at the heart of the planet, and they became Sith assassins that fed on the Force. And Malachor's taint wasn't limited to the planet itself. The wound in the Force at Malachor became an echo that spread across the galaxy, and it worsened other wounds in the Force, such that the echoes became so loud that they threatened to deafen the entire galaxy to the Force. This was averted when Malachor 5 was destroyed and the wound was healed at the close of the Dark Wars. But if left unchecked, Malachor could have plunged the entire galaxy into total darkness. We think it's pretty self-evident that Legends Malachor is much more terrifying than canon Malachor, and we won't insult your intelligence by explaining the obvious, but there's more to what makes Malachor 5 terrifying than the obvious aesthetic reasons. The two versions of Malachor are different on an extremely fundamental level. Canon Malachor is an old battlefield, a place that silently bears witness to ancient atrocities, and the evil of the planet is a rather gimmicky Sith superweapon at its heart. Legends Malachor is not just a battlefield, not just a reminder of the past, but the past made present. It drags out the horror of that one moment indefinitely. The planet itself is a threat, an active nexus that continues to suffer, to scream, to throb in the Force. It, like canon Malachor, is dead, but unquietly so. Also important in comparisons between the two is the nature of the evil that Malachor represents. Canon Malachor just houses a superweapon. Legends Malachor also involves a superweapon, if an unconventional one, but the real evil of the planet isn't the weapon itself, but the slaughter it creates. The evil of Malachor 5 is mass death itself. In Krea's words, it is something of the Sith, but it was fueled by war. And what makes it so terrible is the ordinary human atrocity that took place there, not some arcane work of the dark side. These two framings also each present a different version of the dark side. Canon Malachor presents a much more conventional take on the dark side, one that the Sith would have been most amenable to. It presents a weapon that those without reservations can claim and harness, a source of terrible power that comes with the risk of self-destruction. But Legends Malachor gets to the core of what the dark side really is. Not a power that can be claimed, but an affront to life itself. A corrupting force that consumes without reason nor restraint. Malachor 5 drowned Jedi in the dark side, promising them power, but the power it offered was hollow and dead, a self-destructive hunger that drained its own users of their humanity. It represented the ultimate extreme of the dark side, and in the context of the Star Wars universe, that's why Legends Malachor was so terrifying. In summary, we are once again asking for you to play Knights of the Old Republic 2. But what do you think? What's your favorite version of Malachor? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comment section below.